Happy Friday Eve.
Happy Friday Eve. We're almost there, Collin.
We have made it through the week.
Yes, we have. And it's been a busy day today so far.
It has.
It really has.
Yeah, welcome to the big picture, where we're taking a look at some of the big stories around Central Ohio and kind of going in depth, talking a little bit more about each one. There's quite a bit to talk about today as well.
Let's start with Artemis. Successful launch.
Did you watch?
I didn't. I was in bed.
Wow.
I had like 30 minutes left, and I was like, I'm dozing off.
Yeah.
I'm just going to watch this in the morning.
Yeah, you do go to bed a little earlier than I do.
You go to bed at what, 7?
7:30.
That's late, Collin.
Yeah.
I try to go to bed at like 5.
But I take a
5:30.
nap.
Okay,
I
don't nap.
I
don't nap.
take a nap. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right.
But no, it was exciting. It was really cool.
So we have a lot of coverage with Artemis. Meredith Garfalo, she's coming on later in a little bit to talk more about that. She did a lot of coverage with Tegna leading up to the launch, so that's really exciting. And we also have Kevin Landers coming on today. Yeah. He's previewing a story that he's been working on, and it's about tourism surveillance in cities.
Basically
just from your cell phone.
Who's coming in.
Right.
And,
he's talking to the city of Powell about it. And it's just, I listened to the whole interview with the city, and it's really, really interesting. Just about what we agree to unconsciously, like when we hit accept on the app that we just downloaded. So it's a really good story.
But the other big thing, data centers. Now we're looking at a constitutional amendment for the state of Ohio, which would affect basically the growth and influx of all of these data centers, as we've talked about before. According to datacentermap.com, there are more than 100 currently in operation in Central Ohio, in operation or slated for operation.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have concerns about their neighborhoods, about the water quality, energy.
I mean, we're in the middle of a big dust up in Hilliard right now over the one that's going in for Amazon and their plans. When it comes to how to power it, Amazon wants to put in like 250 diesel generators in the event that the power goes out there. But the residents are like, well, what about the noise and all of this other stuff? So it may not happen.
Right. Very valid. Well, there's a group called Ohio Residents for Responsible Development, and the group's petition has actually been certified by Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost. But the Data Center Coalition, they're trying to push back on all that, saying data centers, help drive that economic development and growth and help create jobs for people here in Ohio. But this is what a representative from the Ohio Residents for Responsible Development had to say about what's going on.
I think that they have a huge potential for enormous negative impact on an environmental level.
Yeah. So, and that is very similar to what we've heard from a lot of people, is that environmental impact. And there's a lot of questions. I mean, we've seen these huge influx of them because we know they do take a lot of electricity from the grid. We also know that they use a lot of fresh water for their cooling systems. All of those servers, I mean, we're talking incredible amounts of electronic equipment that needs cooled, and they use water cooling to cool them down. And I think that is a big concern there for a lot of people, is what is it doing to the same water that you and I drink?
And like you said, it's in a very concentrated area. So we're talking 100 of the 200 are in Central Ohio alone, which puts a huge strain on our water sources and our electricity sources. But we reached out to the Data Center Coalition Vice President of State Policy, Dan DiEuro, and he said, in quote, we have that pulled up right there. He said, a statewide moratorium on data centers would discourage further investment, undermine Ohio's economic momentum, and signal that Ohio is closed for business. Okay, but I definitely think, people want to make sure that their homes and their neighborhoods are not being ruined and their water's not being polluted.
Right. But I've said this before too, that we need them. They have to go somewhere,
right?
Because as more and more things go online, I mean, everything is now held in the cloud, and the clouds are data centers. And just like this is hosted in a data center somewhere, don't know where. That is somebody in this company above me. But so many things that we do in our day-to-day lives now require internet connectivity and hosting somewhere. That these data centers have to go somewhere, and Ohio has found itself in a unique position due to our geography of really having
flat open land
and a lack of natural disasters. I mean, you can't really use the West Coast because earthquake potentials and wildfires. The East Coast runs into hurricanes and those nor'easter snowstorms. Here in Ohio, yes, we get tornadoes, but they're not Nebraska-sized tornadoes.
Right. And if you go up towards northern Ohio, we start getting into the national park territory and it gets really treesy and hilly. And then just central Ohio, it's flat. Dayton, it's flat. But then Cincinnati gets a little hilly the closer you get to the water. But central Ohio really is that prime location that a lot of these businesses are realizing when it comes to building these data centers.
But communities are also starting to push back. We've seen several communities already go through and put forward what is essentially a ban on new data center development.
Until they figure out what legislation they want to have in place before they actually start building, not kind of walk backwards.
Right. So Pataskala is in the middle of one of these right now.
Yeah, they are. So neighbors in Pataskala, they were in a planning and zoning meeting. This happened last night, and they're concerned about the project aligned data centers. And the company says the project would bring, of course, economic benefits, job growth, all that. We've heard it time and time again. But residents say they want more time to consider their proposal before it moves forward. This is what a resident had to say that we spoke to.
Will our electric rates really not go up, or is that just a promise to make us all feel better? There's so much we do not know.
So, as she raised the same concern that we just talked about, is that there's so much we don't know.
There's a lot of unknown. And again, we only have so much water. We only have so much power in our grid currently that they really got to figure this all out instead of just building it and then backtracking.
Right. And I mean, I know this has been a big talking point from AP because they're the supplier.
Hey, they're a part of the grid. Yeah,
they are part of the grid. That is, I can't remember what the name of the actual grid system is, but they're in the same boat of we have to get new power online because there frankly isn't enough. President Donald Trump has said these data centers need to basically create and power their own, or find a way to pay up, pony up. Because that was the same thing last year when there was the proposal basically for these data centers to pay a tariff on their electricity. That came from the state level to pretty much pay for the promised amount of power they would have to use. That's been held up in the courts. Yeah.
It's still being worked out, and obviously residents here in Central Ohio, they're worried about their property, they're worried about their land, so they're speaking up about it. But we will obviously keep following this story. Yeah. We have Boomtown here at 10 TV, where Angela Ann dives deeper into these issues. So
and she'll join us tomorrow.
Yes, she is. There's a new episode dropping tomorrow, so she'll be on to talk about that. But we're going to switch gears, and we're going to talk about gun safety now. And this is on the heels of a meeting that's happening tonight with the city of Columbus, and they're trying to discuss curfew for juveniles as the summer months approach. I mean, they're right around the corner despite it being a little cold yesterday.
Right. So the city of Columbus has invested $7.5 million into summer youth programming. I think that was $7.5 million. But anyway, and the whole idea of the summer youth programming is basically to keep kids busy, to keep them out of trouble.
Right.
So I believe, it's for kids like 13 and under. It's a pretty tight
13
curfew.
to 17.
An hour after sunset to 4:30 in the morning. Yeah.
Yes. So kids 13 and under are not allowed to hang out in the public unsupervised for an hour after sunset until 4:30 in the morning. And their concern has been that this really has not been enforced, especially this past year. So how do we actually enforce that?
Right.
Policy.
And that is a big.
I mean, it's a huge question. I know.
You only have so many officers, and you have to wonder, are there other things they could and should be doing?
Right. And you, as a parent, parents can only do so much sometimes.
But also keep track of your kids.
But also exactly know where your kids are at. Absolutely. Yeah. But the other conversation all about all of this is gun safety, because unfortunately the reality is that kids that stay out too late, they get into some trouble sometimes. It's just inevitable.
Yeah. And the case we're talking about right now really evolves back to these accidental gun deaths and gun shootings that we've had in really the recent months and recent years, where whether that be a young child gets a hold of an unsecured gun and pulls the trigger and either shoots themselves
or a friend or a
sibling,
parent.
and it's happened. I mean, really, in the last few months, we've had 4 or 5 right back to back.
5.
So this is back in 2022. Columbus City Council passed basically a safe gun storage law that guns had to be locked away when not in use. Ammunition needed to be stored separately, and also it banned high-capacity magazines.
Yeah.
But as you could guess, that almost immediately got held up in court. This has never been enforced because it's been stuck in the court system since then. People against this say these laws are a violation of your Second Amendment constitutional rights. And we talked with one of the local gun shop owners who says the people who this is trying to police, it won't, because the enforcement's going to be hard. Because if you're somebody who has an unsecured gun, you're not going to secure it anyway
in their
just
home.
because it's the law.
Exactly.
There are a lot of questions there.
And I do think it partly comes down to just gun safety education. And if you're going to purchase a gun, you need to be educated on how to store it, how to use it. You cannot just leave it around your house if you've children or older children in the house. So they're going to be talking about that tonight and how, again, to enforce some of these rules that are in laws that they're trying to put into effect.
And even after this discussion, it still can't be enforced because it's now back to the appellate court. But it is all about these safe gun storage. As a gun owner myself, they are put away in a yes, they're put away. Ammunition is stored separately.
Good.
I don't have kids, but it's the event of if there are kids, that situation.
Yeah.
So,
I don't own a gun. Just putting that out there. No. Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about next Artemis. That was a really historic moment that happened yesterday evening. We're going to play a little video of that.
Booster ignition and lift off.
So Meredith Carfallo joining us now.
You had a busy day yesterday.
Oh my gosh, it was such a busy day. But those are the moments when you're on the morning show that's worth staying up for. We had a nationwide coverage with our sister stations in Cleveland, WKYC Chief Meteorologist Betsy Kling and Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich down in Charlotte at WCNC. And oh my gosh, you guys. I mean, did either of you have a chance to watch it live, or was it more? Okay.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I did. I stayed up and watched it and
I
then
was
went to
in
bed
bed
immediately after.
I think the cool thing is this has not happened, sending our United States astronauts to orbit the moon since 1972. So for a lot of us, we did not witness this. We don't know what it was like for the shuttle era. Now, fast forward, we have the new generations, a new space race that's happening now. And yesterday, despite a 10-second or a 10-minute delay from that launch window opening, we were able to get our astronauts up, and they are heading into place to orbit the moon.
And because this is such a different departure from the space shuttles that we remember from, our childhood, of whether that be, Discovery, Columbia, all of those, those were really focused on scientific projects, ISS building. This is farther. This is a lot bigger.
This is so much farther. And remember the big TVs that they'd roll out, the huge TVs. The kids now are like, wait, I look it on my phone. No, it was a very, very fun thing in the classroom to be part of that. And now we're building on these missions. I mean, we've got the International Space Station, which by the way, at the end of this decade will be retired. So we're starting to explore more deep space. We're going to be doing more projects on the moon. The next chapter of this is going to focus in on space exploration and also science that's going to happen on the lunar surface. So this is just getting their feet wet of seeing the moon, seeing the dark side of the moon for the first time ever, which it's more than a Pink Floyd song. I'll tell you that.
And when we talk about, like Apollo 13, they were a lot closer in the orbit, where these guys, what they're going to see is, I think it was described to us as almost like the size of a basketball. Like they're going quite a ways.
Yeah, we have a video that we can pull up. This is them when they actually were in space, and that's when they're separating from the rocket that launched them there.
Well, let's talk about the delay.
Because
but
it just puts in perspective how big the universe is,
I mean, that's powerful imagery right there. Now, some people might want, okay, 10 minutes past the launch open window. So what happened was it's called a flight termination system. So worst case scenario, the rocket, the launch happens and it's starting to go in a different direction. You have a lot of people, hundreds of thousands of people that are watching. This system would actually take the rocket and abort it and put it in the ocean or somewhere safe. It was having some issues. But I think the cool part about this that we should focus in on is they were able to go into storage from some of the pieces and parts from back in the shuttle era, find something similar, bring it in, and by using it, get things checked out so they could move forward to go. And the best part was they had the countdown still going on, so they were working literally with the clock to keep it on track. And that only delayed things by about 10 minutes because then they had to do a recheck. They stopped at 10 minutes before launch to make sure everything was a go. And if you listen to it, it was pretty crazy. But, post what we just saw here, about 10 hours into their flight, they had to do a lot of checks. They didn't just get to hang out and say, oh my gosh, we're in space. This is so cool. They actually had to do, and what happened actually recently was they had to adjust the path. And it takes about a minute for them to do that, to kind of coast the capsule in a different direction. So soon they're going to be sleeping for 4 more hours. They had 4 hours of sleep first, then they did some work. Now they're doing 4 more hours of sleep. And then later tonight, about 8 o'clock, they're looking at a different burn. We'll call it a translunar injection burn. Basically what that's going to do is put them in position now on the new path to go orbit the moon.
Okay. Wow. They're busy up there.
They're
at
so
work.
busy. But I've heard they had toilet issues, which is no bueno. I've heard they're, getting adjusted to the sleep. They're seeing things for the first time that are just, mind blowing. So this is going to be a fun 10 days. We're in day 1, so we got about 9 more days, a little over a week of their adventures to follow.
Yeah. On the radio, you could hear one of the astronauts who was steering it. Basically, he was like, "This feels like I'm driving on like a bumpy road, but it's a lot quieter here than it was in the simulation." And I just thought that was like a fun analogy kind of like to what they're doing.
I can't
how
even
quiet
imagine.
it is up there.
I can't even, think about it. It's just you and the spacecraft and maybe
other
a few
people.
aliens
Yeah.
hanging out. Whatever you believe.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all your coverage leading up to this. We know you spoke with the meteorologist who was in charge of finding that window with the weather, but great stuff.
Thank you. And I do want to stress that we had 2 flight directors, Jeff Radigan, and, he was an Ohio State grad. He was one of the leads. And then we also had Rick Henflag, who will be bringing them safely back home. So a full circle of Ohio in the flight director's seat in mission control.
Yeah, the birthplace of aviation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
we'll be right back.
Welcome back to The Big Picture. And we are talking with Jay Fox from the Ohio News Network right now. And we are talking a case out of Dayton and some alleged officer misconduct.
Well, it's more than alleged officer misconduct. It is scrutiny over the entire department and their behavior as officers. And this all started to come to light back on the 24th of March when 44-year-old Reginald Thomas was stopped while he was riding his bicycle because he didn't have a headlight on the bicycle. Now, police stopped him and he fled, and they chased after him and they caught up to him, and there was a struggle. And in the course of the struggle, he allegedly reached for a handgun, and that's when one officer fatally shot him. And that's what we call an officer-involved shooting. Well, this was the fourth this year. And since 2021, there have been more than 15. And statistically and disturbingly, the majority of these victims of officer-involved shootings are black. So now you have advocates and activists from the community that are demanding the creation of a citizen-led police review board, and also calling for a third-party administration. And on top of that, they want the head of the city manager and they want the head of the police chief. And you know the police chief.
Yeah, I used to work in Dayton, and I actually interviewed him when he was coming into that position after Chief Richard Beal retired after more than a decade of being chief in the city of Dayton. And the city was looking for a police chief that could stay there for a long time. So when I heard the news yesterday that he would be resigning, I was very surprised.
4.5 years.
Yeah.
And it follows 2 lawsuits regarding excessive force and racial targeting, and then an alleged discrimination suit that involved a disabled individual, and they claimed that he was discriminated against because he was disabled. So, as you mentioned, Police Chief Kamran Afzal announced his resignation, and guess where he's going?
Where's he going?
Greensboro, North Carolina. He's going to be the new police chief there, but police chief.
Yeah.
Yeah, we believe in the police chief. That's a lot of alliteration, isn't it?
That's a lot of words.
So what the question is did he resign and seek this new job because of community pressures for him to be fired? Because like you said, he was going to come in and he was going to stay there for a long time.
I don't know if we'll ever know the answer to that.
Perhaps not. But we do know that a national search for his replacement is underway. We also know that this is a statewide problem. The Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation says Ohio averaged between 58 and 67 officer-involved shooting incidents since early 2025. And we know that that number sounds alarming, but there are so many circumstances involved in these cases where these officers are trying to protect themselves, they're trying to protect the community, and people are not responding to commands in a way that they should. So it's kind of a delicate balance between enforcing the law and perhaps going a step beyond.
Right. And I mean, we just had one yesterday in Columbus on the north end up at the Moose Lodge. And it was a situation such as that the man was described as irate.
I saw that.
And refused the officer's orders to put the guns down. And eventually they became increasingly aggressive. But that one is also under investigation.
All because he
by
wanted to
BCI.
go into the lodge, which was private.
And it is. It's one of the fraternal organizations. Don't know if this gentleman was a member or not, but
And they didn't know. I mean, they do that because they fear that their life might be in danger. So that's why BCI and those other investigators come in to really step back and investigate what led up to those
so
final
you don't
moments.
have your own department investigating your own department. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Ashland now.
Want some good news?
Yes. Bring us the good news.
Tragedy turns into triumph
This
in
is cool.
Orlando at Disney World. So Ashland High School, they're all excited. The marching band is going to perform in the Main Street Parade in Orlando, Florida at Disney World during spring break. They load up the bus. They've got a trailer. They've got all their instruments. And they chug on down to Florida. And when the band director goes, after everybody's settled, to get the instruments out of the trailer, he notices that the lock has been tampered with. And he has to call police because Ashland High School was a victim of what's called smash and grab. So they broke the lock and they took the instruments. Now, they didn't take the tuba And they didn't take, the big drum. They took flutes and they took trumpets and they took saxophones and clarinets. And what's even sadder is some of those were family heirlooms. In fact, all of the instruments were owned by the students and their families themselves. So imagine you are, 800 miles away, 900 miles away from Ashland, and you're ready to perform and suddenly you can't. So
Yeah.
2 musical instrument stores in Orlando at the behest of the musical instrument store in Ashland. This guy picked up the phone and made the calls. They rented the marching band, the instruments, so that they could perform. Aww. Well, this story picked up attention, and another school that was there from Ohio, Anna High School, a parent donated a saxophone. So the kids don't have to worry about returning the instruments. They can bring them home to Ashland, and then that owner of that store in Ashland's going to return them for them.
Aww.
But the cool thing about it is they got to perform in the parade, and as they were making that turn onto Main Street, which is a really famous turn in these parades at Disney World, people started cheering for Ashland High School.
Aww.
On top of it, a GoFundMe has raised over $3,000 and counting to permanently replace those instruments.
Because they're expensive.
Oh, yes.
Incredibly expensive. Because, I think a trombone's going to be your cheapest, and those start at like $600.
They're very
Why
expensive.
would a trombone be cheaper than a flute?
Because a flute takes so much because you've got the pads and all the mechanisms.
I see, but the flute's small. I would think it would be, but I guess not.
Right. There's a lot of craftsmanship.
All right.
There isn't a trombone.
You two know
too,
a lot about brass instruments.
All I know about a brass instrument was I was with my daughter at a father-daughter event at the University of Kansas, and we were in a facility that serves beverages. How do you like that for politically correct? And I was raising my glass to give a toast as the visiting marching band had their little bar band. And as soon as I put it up, the trombone slide hit the glass and it shattered all over.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So yes, I know a little bit about brass instruments.
And a slight point of order. A flute is a woodwind, not a brass.
See, I didn't know that either.
All right. Okay. Can you play the flute?
No, my mom does.
Okay.
I play
Well, there we
trombone.
go.
Is a recorder part of that?
It is a woodwind.
Okay.
As is a clarinet.
Wow, and I play the
We've
piano,
been-
so we can start a band.
We've been schooled, and we both have cats that sing.
Love it.
Well,
So
it's
there we go.
fantastic.
Alrighty. Jay, thank you so much for
Always
coming
a
on
pleasure.
today. Appreciate it. We'll be right back after this short break.
Welcome back to The Big Picture at 9:30. Kevin Landers joins us now, and we are talking about an interesting story coming out of Powell.
What's going on there?
Yeah, so we started to look at artificial intelligence and how it's being used. And Powell is one of many cities that now uses artificial intelligence, specifically a company called Placer AI. Then they use it to help with their economic development, they tell us. So basically, if you enter or exit Powell, you're being watched. You're being watched not by a police officer or someone around the corner, but you're being watched through your cell phone. And that data is being scrubbed by a third party, by the app, and then it's sent to Placer AI, which then provides data to the city of Powell. And they use it for economic development. So they want to know, for example, how many people are coming into town at what hours, how long do they park, where do they go after, where do they come from, and they use it so that businesses can use that data to help basically geofence customers to say, oh, a lot of my customers shop at my store between these hours, therefore I need to make sure that I have this or that available for them, or what can I do to attract more people to my business based on all this data that they're pulling. And so we started to look at how this data is being used. Do people know it? How transparent is the city about it? And so that's what our story is about. And we found out that it's not just Powell, it's Dublin that uses it. I think Powell pays $15,000 to $16,000 a year for access to this data.
That's a lot of money.
Dublin pays $25,000 a year. They've been using it for many years, and it's based on population size. So smaller cities pay a little less than bigger cities. Easton uses it. Cleveland Metro Parks use it. A lot of people use this data. But what's interesting is that there's a question about how much data we are giving up. How much data do we know that's being used, and then what happens to that data? And so that's kind of what our story looked at. And this is the ordinance that Powell passed back in January that mentions this Placer AI company. And so we took a deep dive into how AI is being used, what you should do in terms of protecting yourself. And there's actually a really simple way to do it. Basically, turn off your location on your phone. Now, there's an issue with that because you want to get the latest weather. You want to, Amazon wants to know what you're doing and so forth. So you'll need to kind of toggle back and forth. But if you enter Powell or Dublin or wherever and you don't want people to know how your data is being used, just simply turn off the location device, and that'll at least prevent most of it, not necessarily all of it. But the one thing I think is really interesting that consumers often don't realize is that when let's say you download TikTok or Amazon, you consent to your data being used, and you may forget about it and just download it and not worry. But it's important to read the fine print because if you turn that location data off, it now tells you stop tracking my data. So that's our story, and I think it's an interesting debate to have about our government's becoming more omnipotent about us and who we are and what data do you want to keep private. Even though it's scrubbed, it doesn't have your name, doesn't have your address, but it does have your median income, your race, your age, your zip code. It doesn't tell you where you live, but it can tell cities where your neighborhood is. And how much of that data do you want out there? There's some good and perhaps bad, but the important thing is that cities are transparent about it so that the public knows.
And you spoke to who with this City of Powell?
We spoke to the economic development director.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to pull up a soundbite from part of your interview with him. I felt like he got a little defensive when you asked about consenting private information. Take a listen.
I'm sure a lot of people don't realize that when they come to the city of Powell, their phone is telling the city about their traffic patterns, their spending habits, perhaps, where they shop, where they avoid.
I mean, I think most people would probably assume wherever they go, since pretty much every city around us uses the same software, and wherever you go anymore, people can track you to that degree. They don't know who you are,
but we're using this information to track people without their consent. And I'm wondering if that raises some privacy concerns, if that raises questions of how much information am I giving away?
Yeah. Well, I guess, one way to look at it is I'm not tracking a person. I'm just tracking a cell phone and some demographic data that's attached to it. I don't know it's you. I would not be able to tell that you just drove into our community with your camera crew and you're here.
How would you would know that? You would know it in general.
I would know that, hey, a male, in your age group came into the community during this time period. and it would aggregate you with a bunch of other data.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, as more cities use this and more information that you glean from who's coming into your community, do you find that that is in any way an invasion of privacy?
No, because again, I'm not getting anything personal. I really don't know who, again, I'm not tracking people. I don't know who they are.
Okay, so our producer Zenobia was asking, how do they even know what race you are, your median income, if you're not like openly disclosing that information when you download TikTok or something?
The bottom line is the data is already out there. The data is already out there, and that's how they know. Now, not every app works the same way, but if you go to Placer AI's website, which I encourage people to do, you can learn all about their information and how they use it. They use it for shopping malls. A lot of it is, tracking behaviors. And what's interesting is that while cities will say, well, I'm using it for economic development because I want to know what the traffic flows are, the traffic patterns, and when people come in, they can also geo-fence those customers to say, oh, we know between noon and 5 o'clock, a lot of people shop at X store. So I'm going to start sending ads to your phone to encourage you to stay there. So in some ways, it's influencing shopping behavior as well, right? So let's say in Powell's case, right, they want to capture as many people as they can who go to the zoo, for example, since it's so close. Yeah. So how do they attract more people who are getting ready to leave the zoo to come to Powell? So they can use that data to start sending information,
targeted ads,
and targeting ads to say, hey, come to Powell. There's a 25% discount on you and your family to have dinner, right? So there's a way that they can use that to help lure people into the city.
That's interesting because I feel like even after COVID, everyone's like flow has changed when it comes to like when people go to the grocery store. When traffic starts in Columbus, it starts around like 3:30 now. I swear.
Right.
And I go to the grocery store a lot of times, like around, I guess it's lunchtime, or Target, and there's so many people, and I'm like, I know why I'm not at work right now, but why are you guys not at work? So I think it's interesting that they're trying to figure out where everyone's going.
So
and
here
when.
You brought up an interesting point. So you mentioned COVID. They used this during COVID. And they used it during when Mike DeWine had a stay-at-home order. They wanted to find out how many people were actually adhering to it, and they used AI to use traffic patterns to see who was staying at home and who wasn't. And they were seeing how effective those rules were being made. So it has a history, obviously, but more and more cities are relying on this data, and it's just kind of interesting to see how much of your information is out there and what you can do to protect yourself.
I feel like just so much of our info is just already out there.
It's
There's
out there.
really no going back at this point.
Right. I think most people understand that when they have a phone, that their information is being used. The question is, how is it being used? How is it being stored? What are the city's rules and regulations for it? What happens if there's a change of power? There's a lot of questions being raised. And what's interesting about this story is before we even wrote this story, I just went on Instagram and did a video that I was interested in the story. I probably got maybe 100 comments from people who said, what? I didn't know this. No one told me about this. This isn't right. And that's when we knew we had a story, that there are a lot of people interested in this. And so we'll see what the reaction is when the story airs.
Right. And you said taxpayer dollars are paying for it.
That's right.
So you're paying for it.
The cities are paying a lot of money for this data, which they think is worth it, obviously, because they believe that it's the best way for them to get an understanding of who's coming in their town and why. Yeah.
Well, we want to talk about another story you did yesterday, because you always do great work.
Thank
you know it. So Les Wexner, there's a new lawsuit that was brought up against him. What is this? We're going to play your package, but just roughly give us an intro to it.
Well, so this lawsuit was filed in March in the state of New York, and several women have come forward and said that they were abused by Jeffrey Epstein. And basically the crux of the lawsuit is alleging that Wexner provided the financial means and house by which Jeffrey Epstein was able to carry out his crimes. Now, his attorney says this lawsuit is full of a lot of great storytelling, but not a lot of facts. And for example, the lawsuit alleges that that Wexner had basically control of the house in New York while Epstein was doing these things, which is, the lawsuit says it's absolutely not true. The Wexner had sold the house before, and that Epstein had used the house to carry out his crimes. Also, there was questions about Wexner allowing Epstein to use his plane. Wexner's attorney says Epstein bought that plane from L Brands. Wexner had no business with that plane afterwards. So the lawsuit is sort of drudging up a lot of the things that we already know, other than the fact that there's a the statute that they're using in the lawsuit was involving, I think it was called Gender Violence Act, which the city of New York passed, which allows victims to go back and sue years after it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
The plaintiffs say Jeffrey Epstein sexually abused them, and they are suing Leslie Wexner, the 9 East 71st Street Corporation, and the Wexner Foundation for allegedly enabling the abuse. The complaint states for 2 decades, between 1987 and 2007, Wexner gave Epstein $200 million or more that Epstein used to commit acts of gender-motivated violence against hundreds of women and minor girls, including the plaintiffs in New York City. The lawsuit alleges Wexner was not a passive donor, but an active enabler who knew or should have known Epstein was abusing women and girls, and it seeks damages for the injuries the plaintiffs say they suffered. It alleges Wexner's New York home at 9 East 71st Street was allegedly one of the key places Epstein used to commit abuse, and that Wexner owned the mansion and provided it to Epstein between 1998 and 2011. Wexner's attorney, Thomas Davies, responded that Wexners have tremendous sympathy for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein's horrendous crimes. The complaint, however, fails to state any actual basis for asserting a claim against Mr. Wexner. The allegation that he gave Epstein approximately $200 million over the course of 20 years is untrue. Mr. Wexner paid Epstein for wealth management services and had no knowledge of Epstein's wrongdoing. It is well documented that Mr. Wexner sold the New York townhouse to Epstein for $20 million in 1998.
Okay. Well, they're in complete denial. His attorney is.
Yeah, and so the part of this lawsuit, it doesn't mention any kind of financial claim at the end, but under this statute in New York, they can get both compensatory and punitive damages. So we'll see where it goes.
And does it play at all in relation to the deposition?
Yeah, there's a lot of information that's in the lawsuit that they regurgitate from the deposition. Here's what Wexner said, and they're using that. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't think this is the last we'll hear of this story for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it.
Thank
We'll
you.
be right back.
Welcome back to the big picture. There's some new information out regarding the murders of Spencer and Monique Tepe.
Yes, devastating story that happened.
Right. So their murders were the end of December 30th, over in the Wineland Park neighborhood in Columbus. So what we're learning out of this is basically the search warrant has been unsealed. That was sealed for 90 days is typically how that works. And finally it came out. And so what we're learning about that really is what all was taken.
And
that
what was
day.
gathered.
Right. What were they looking for? And so we know the search warrant was filed the day that the couple were found dead inside their home there. And we know that Columbus police, the day they were there, took 29 pieces of evidence. But it doesn't outline what those pieces of evidence are. But we do know there were a lot of photos taken. There were about 400
It's a lot of
different
photos.
photos. Yeah, it was a lot of photos. We also know what they were looking for, and that was guns, weapons of any kind, DNA fingerprints left on things. If who the person who did this dropped their cell phone, any security video, really anything that they could think could possibly be tied to what led to the deaths of Spencer and Monique Tepe.
Yeah. All that's definitely going to, be very helpful
Right.
for the prosecution when that time comes for that to go down.
And I mean, this is it is a tragic story. It gained national attention.
People are still talking about it.
They
It's just
are.
her ex-husband involved. I mean, it sounds like a Lifetime movie. I hate to say that, but it does.
Yeah, so this goes back to December 30th. And when things started to go awry, or at least look suspicious, is when Spencer Tepe didn't show up to work that morning of December 30th at his Athens area dental office.
Yes, he's a dentist, and his
Yeah.
coworkers were very worried. I listened to those 911 calls. I mean, they were like, this is out of character.
Yeah.
He shows up every day on time.
Right.
And they
when-
were freaking out.
Yeah, so they called, asked for a wellness check. And when officers, first arrived at the home, there was nothing that seemed out of place. I mean, nothing was on the exterior of the home was broken. It wasn't until a friend of the Tepes let them into the house that the full
Well, they saw the crime scene.
Yes,
I mean,
yeah.
the two children were still inside,
Still inside.
thankfully alive, not injured.
Physically uninjured,
But
yeah.
the autopsy shows Spencer was shot 7 times and Monique was shot 9 times.
Yeah.
And they were, that's just a lot.
Right. And I mean, they were a young family. Their kids are very young, now in the hands of relatives. They'd only been married for a handful of years.
Right, and
they were married in that house.
Yeah.
That,
their
when
wedding
this
video.
happened.
It kills me. It's inside of that house.
Right. So they were married. This is from the baptism of one of their children. It's a tragedy. That house is now up for sale in the Wineland Park neighborhood. But this is still something that there are a lot of questions out there. We do know, the one person that has been now arrested and charged is Monique Tepe's ex-husband. They
Yes.
divorced in 2017.
Michael McKee. This is him walking into court. I think this was his first court appearance.
Yes, in Winnebago County, Illinois. So how this all went down is that some surveillance video was basically given as a tip to Columbus police, and in that was a car that was seen leaving or coming to and leaving that neighborhood.
And a man walking
And
with
a
a
man
hood
walking.
up.
Yeah, and they were able to track this car to Rockford, Illinois, and tie that car to
His address.
yes.
He lived in Lincoln Park in Chicago.
In Chicago, so there's a lot of distance all tied into this. Even though the couple were pronounced dead at about 10 o'clock that morning, investigators believe obviously this.
It's all
you're innocent-
speculatory,
you're innocent
right?
until proven guilty.
Absolutely.
If Michael McKee is the person who did this, they believe he was in the home sometime between 2 and 5 a.m. that morning.
And they also believe he probably came down to Columbus before to plan this. So this wasn't his first trip here.
Right. There's a lot of questions in this case. It's tragic how this happened, especially in front of the kids.
Yeah, and now they are left without either of their parents.
But
It's
Michael
upsetting.
McKee is set for another court hearing, I believe, next week. So he'll be back in court here in Franklin County because we had to go through the whole extradition process because he was arrested over in Winnebago County.
And that took a while to get him back.
It did.
They had to use a
because-
third party for that.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion over, okay, whose responsibility is it to get him here? Right now he's sitting in the Franklin County jail.
Yeah. So we'll keep following that story, of course, and just thoughts and prayers to the family that remains that's severely impacted by this. We do want to do a hard right turn to gas prices because the price of diesel has now gone up 50%. It's at $5.50 a gallon. And this means it's going to start directly impacting our wallets.
Because just about everything runs on diesel
Everything
fuel,
runs
from
on diesel.
semi-trucks, farming equipment,
plastic,
diesel,
oil.
Train locomotives. Most of them still run on diesel. I don't think they're fuel oil, but anyway, there's a lot that relies on diesel fuel. It is really the fuel that powers the nation.
Yeah. So last night, obviously, President Trump addressed the nation in about a 20-minute long speech, and he is now calling on the rest of the world to do their part to try to get the Strait of Hormuz reopened, which the Strait of Hormuz is responsible for the transportation of over 20% of the world's crude oil. So today, the UK Prime Minister is holding a virtual meeting with other leaders to figure out a way to get it reopened. But this is what President Trump had to say about the oil concerns in that speech last night.
The countries of the world that do receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage. They must cherish it. They must grab it and cherish it. They can do it easily. We will be helpful, but they should take the lead in protecting the oil that they so desperately depend on. So to those countries that can't get fuel, many of which refused to get involved in the decapitation of Iran, we had to do it ourselves. I have a suggestion. Number one, buy oil from the United States of America. We have plenty. We have so much. And number two, build up some delayed courage. Should have done it before. Should have done it with us, as we asked. Go to the Strait and just take it, protect it, use it for yourselves.
Yeah, and the big fear now is Europe is concerned that they are on track to have a jet fuel shortage, which will impact flights all around the world.
Right. And oil is traded as a commodity, which is basically that we can't set our own prices. It's all tied to the global chain of things.
Right.
It's it's the same way as the price of coffee, corn, orange juice is a commodity. It's that stuff that sets those prices. Anyway, how does it all affect what we're paying at the pump? We mentioned the diesel fuel's up to this. Here in Ohio, this is for regular gasoline. I mean, we're talking unleaded 87 at the pump. So nationwide, it's just above $4 at this point.
In Franklin County, it's about $3.82. Okay.
Yeah, statewide, $3.75 for a gallon. That's not as high as it was last week, but it's certainly unpleasant.
Yeah.
Athens is paying closer to that $4 mark, about $3.96, $3.71 over in Hocking County. But it's starting to impact people. People are starting to maybe look at their driving habits, make instead of making 2 or 3 trips that day, you plan about okay, I make this stop on my way home, so you're not paying $4 a gallon for gas.
Yeah, I'm just not filling up all the way because they just can't afford it at that moment. Right. So
it reminds
you got to fill up your car.
I do actually. I am due for a fill up.
You are.
I'm looking back let's see. Yeah, because it's we started driving about the time that gas was that $4.50 mark. In 2010, 2012. Yeah.
Is that how long ago it was?
Yeah.
I just,
but I remember
I filled up my car the other day. It was almost $70. I had a heart attack.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
It's that's a pair of cute shoes. I'm spending on gas? Not fun. Okay. Well, we have Jay Flyburn coming up. Next, he's talking about Kappa's new lineup for the Broadway shows. Yep. I know we're excited about that. And
Death
some not so funny April Fool's jokes, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Big Picture.
What's up, guys? Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. It's almost Friday. We were in the break talking about how April Fool's this year. I didn't think it was very funny. What about you?
Well, that's because you got pranked.
Yeah.
You thought it was funny?
I never think April Fool's is funny.
I don't either. And I don't think government offices or government elected, politicians should be able to. City government leaders are allowed to put that stuff out. Anyway, we'll get off that.
What was so funny is yesterday in the editorial meeting that we have here, we were all reminded to be careful what we see and what we choose to report on, because a lot of people do play jokes.
So much harder than it already is.
Because they were, you know what?
One day of the year.
I blame Chat GPT because I felt like these entities that were participating in April Fools in the city of Columbus, they're, using it to really be like, make this sound like a press release and use this image to make it look legit.
Even the AI video generators make it so simple now to, you look at something and think, is this real? And yesterday, a lot of it really was not real.
And I mean, Kappa got involved in the April Fools. Here's one that we were talking about.
Let's pull it up.
Kappa put this up. It is an April Fool's joke.
It's so perfect.
But it basically saying that we're going to a height policy. If you're over this tall, you can't sit here.
Isn't a bad idea?
Well, we've all been in the
we've
theater
all
and
been
sat
there,
behind someone that's too tall.
Yeah. I've sat in staff meetings here where somebody who's too tall in front of me.
Tall people.
Yeah, my husband's one. He would be in the very tall section up top.
We love the tall people. Yeah. That's a funny idea. I did enjoy that one. So they got you with that one. They got Bryn with that one.
Yeah, I guess I just forgot yesterday was April 1st. I just forgot it was April.
I never, 9 times out of 10.
I think
you
April
ask me what
Fool's
the
is
date
stupid.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Did you see the Aura ring?
Well, we're in April now.
We are in April.
Yeah,
the Aura ring.
Aura ring.
Right? This is the popular.
It's the thing that tracks your all your health stuff. It's like an Apple Watch on your finger.
Yes, I think that's a lot too. I don't want to know that stuff.
Checks blood pressure, heart rate, keeps track of things.
So they came out with one for a pet.
Aura ring pet.
Do we have it up?
We do not have that.
No, we don't. Anyway, it
one.
basically showed a big metal thing around a kitten's paw.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that would send me
for that. I would go crazy though, because I can't even have a cat camera in my living room because I would check it all the time.
It said it would allow the user to understand their dog or cat's needs. Which is maybe a thing in the not so distant future.
I'm not opposed to that.
Real.
That would make it 10 times easier for pet care.
Or if you have anxiety all the time about your cat and what they're doing at home.
True. Are they thirsty? Are they
Staying on the topic of Kappa, though, we have the new season. There are some great musicals coming up.
Broadway in Columbus. Oh, it's such an exciting time.
Some of the shows they bring in.
I know.
They do. They really bring top-notch entertainment every year. PNC Broadway in Columbus and Kappa just announced the new slate of shows for the 2026-2027 season. And it's a nice slate. Here's a picture for you to take a peek at. Here are 5 Columbus premieres, including last year's Tony winner for Best Musical, Maybe Happy Ending, and the Broadway smash hit Hell's Kitchen, inspired by the life and music of 17-time Grammy Award-winning artist Alicia Keys. Who doesn't love Alicia Keys?
I know. I want to see that one so
I'm excited
bad.
for the season opener, which is Death Becomes Her.
I want to see that too.
Based on the movie.
That one's going to be so good.
You got
I'm also just very... Because I wanted to go see it
in
New York.
Yeah.
But now it's coming here, so I don't have to.
Even The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. That's going to be cute.
Yeah.
Perfect for Christmas time?
Yeah.
Right. Wicked's coming.
Wicked's going to end things next July.
Yeah. And there's a note on that one. That one is not included in your season tickets for the
because they know let's just be honest. They can make some money off of it.
That one does not, if you buy a season pass, that does not go.
Beetlejuice, too. That'll be cool.
Beetlejuice, based on Tim Burton's beloved film. You got Phantom of the Opera, which is always phenomenal. I saw that one on Broadway years ago. It's a real crowd pleaser. That one's coming in May. The Great Gatsby.
I didn't know that was a Broadway.
I didn't either.
Play.
It's new.
Is it new?
It's a new one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Based on, of course, the novel by
Is
F.
Leo
Scott
going to be in
Fitzgerald.
it?
I doubt it.
I'm kidding.
Maybe he'll show up.
Bring him to Columbus.
But yeah, I don't know. I always love going to the shows.
It's so fun. Just the energy. I mean, who doesn't love live performances?
Oh, they're so good. All those shows, by the way, the upcoming season are at the Ohio Theater, with the exception of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the musical, which will be at Palace Theater also. I don't know why it's over there. But
yeah. All right, that's all the time we've got. Thanks for joining us on The Big Picture.
We'll see you
tomorrow.